Welcome to Matters Financial, Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I was grateful. I like this photograph, day 4 of UNCTAD 14, Good Morning Nairobi. It's taken looking away from the KICC, which is the big conference center that we have here, built many years ago, but very iconic. Had a spinning restaurant at the top. I don't know if it's still working, but we used to go there with my parents and thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. Then we put up a dollar chart going back quite a number of years. I think it's headed higher again, headed higher as the path of least resistance, I think. Once more, came across this interesting article about Peru. Went for dinner for a Peruvian extravaganza with Armando Morales and his wife. He's the IMF resident representative, very good company, and witty as well. In this article in Bloomberg, look at this: small plates are meant for sharing unusual flavor combinations at Amaz, and it looked very tasty. And listen to this data. For the first time, data showing that a global crowd is catching on to what the industry has been buzzing about for years. In 2015, Lima's International Airport welcomed a whopping 4.22 million international visitors, more than any other Latin American hub, and double the figure of its closest competitor, Mexico City. According to MasterCard's latest Global Destinations Index, that number represented a 7% year-on-year rise and put it on the list of the top 10 fastest growing tourism destinations worldwide since 2009. Think of all those newcomers who were on their way to Machu Picchu. A separate study by the UN World Tourism Organization claims that at least 42% of them were coming first and foremost to eat. Tally up their impact and you get a food industry that's set to generate more than $7.5 billion in 2016. According to Peru's Gastronomy Association, APEGA. I can vouch for that. The quality of that food is very good. And I return for some quotes to Robert Musil. I think the book's called A Man for All Seasons. It's an extraordinary book, very big, but brilliant. He's obviously a brilliant writer. And I read it a few years ago. And what would you do if you could rule the world for a day? I suppose I would have no choice but to abolish reality. One does what one is, one becomes what one does. And then finally, life forms a surface that acts as if it could not be otherwise, but under its skin things are pounding and pulsing. Einstein, knowing that his own time was also running out, wrote a now famous letter to Bezos' family. Now he has departed this strange world a little ahead of me, Einstein wrote in his friend's passing. That signifies nothing. For us believing physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Many physicists argue that Einstein's position is implied by the two pillars of modern physics: Einstein's masterpiece, the general theory of relativity, and the standard model of particle physics. The laws that underlie these theories are time-symmetric. That is, the physics they describe is the same, regardless of whether the variable called time increases or decreases. Moreover, they say nothing at all about the point we call now, a special moment or so it appears for us, but seemingly undefined when we talk about the universe at large. The resulting timeless cosmos is sometimes called a block universe, a static block of space-time in which any flow of time or passage through it must presumably be a mental construct or other illusion. Smolin wrote, the future is not now real, and there can be no definite facts of the matter about the future. What is real is the process by which future events are generated out of present events. Very interesting debate. I always felt time was not linear, although our experience of it is, isn't it? I always thought I could revert back, meet my mother and my grandfather, and do all kinds of things. Time shifting. Political reflections. Trump says the US may not defend NATO allies against a Russian attack. Said the US will only come to the aid of NATO members attacked by Russia after reviewing whether those nations have fulfilled their obligations to us. When asked about the recent attempted coup in Turkey, Trump said he would not lecture the nation about purges of political adversaries or crackdowns on civil liberties, saying the US had to first fix our own mess. He praised Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, giving him credit for seeing off the failed coup. Some people say that it was staged. You know that, he said. I don't think so. When the world sees how bad the United States is, and we start talking about civil liberties, I don't think we are a very good messenger, he said. Look at this photo of Donald Trump and his family during Ted Cruz's speech last night, posted by Anu Kapley. Newsweek has an article about why Ted Cruz decked Donald Trump with his speech at the convention. Take you back to the final day of Cruz's campaign in May. He let loose his feelings about Trump by assailing his opponent as a pathological liar, a narcissist, and utterly immoral. And then Marco Caputo tweeted, men like Ted Cruz, if you call them liars and insult their wives, will stab you right in the front at the right time in front of the nation. And indeed, it was a giant stabbing act. No off-ramps, only dead ends in the South China Sea. Asia Times saying that basically this confrontation that was built up with this UNC LOS decision as well, saying that, China's been pushed into a legal corner and without an off-ramp. It's a fair point. Let's move on to the currency markets where the dollar's been strengthening of late. 110.32 euro dollar index 96.96. Japanese yen topped 107, got as high as 107.50, 106.86 last. Swiss franc 0.9857. The pound has had a couple of good sessions, 132.37. Aussie 0.7493, India rupee 67.225, South Korean won 11.3698, the real 325.87. If you didn't look at the World Economic Outlook from the IMF, they had quite a constructive view on Brazil, actually. It was quite interesting. Egyptian pound 8.88, devaluation imminent, and the rand near the top of the range at 14.3132. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index, but remember that earlier when I showed you much more longer term. This one I think is signaling to us that the dollar is about to go to 100. I think you sell rallies in the euro dollar. I showed you that chart yesterday of how it looked like 1999, and it dropped pretty steeply then. Gold, that's been softening. Let's see where we are now. $13.19, come off quite considerably. It's not clear to me whether we're going to rebound, because one senses a stronger dollar will keep pressure on the entire commodity complex. Crude oil up and down yesterday, down then up after the data came out. Last time I looked, $46.01 in New York. Brent tends to trade $1 or so above. Emerging markets, Turkish lira falls to record on ratings cut state of emergency, says Holger. I'll put up his chart. But Charles Robertson at RenCap is saying in today's money, Turkey's lira was weaker than 4 to the dollar in 2001, 2002. Record lows refer only to the nominal rate. Erdogan has targeted more than 50,000 in his purge after the failed Turkish coup, and he has announced a 3-month state of emergency. Before he announced that state of emergency, he called a cabinet meeting on Wednesday of his cabinet, National Security Council, and it was so classified that they were not given any dossiers beforehand, only when they got there. Around a third of Turkey's roughly 360 serving generals have been detained since the coup bid. The threat of prolonged instability in a NATO member country, which has not seen a violent military coup for more than 3 decades, has shaken investors' confidence. Lira hit a 10-month low in early trade on Wednesday, touching 3063. Istanbul stock index down 8% so far this week, worst 3-day performance since 2013. Cost of insuring Turkish debt against default rose to its highest in nearly a month. Over the weekend, I wrote a piece calling it a Turkey of a coup. And I said, in my view, the purge will be a lot more lethal and surgical than the coup attempt. I put up a photograph of detained soldiers arriving in a bus at the courthouse in Istanbul. And I said the purge will be brutal and McCarthyian. Turkey's Erdogan on the S&P downgrade. The S&P decision is political. S&P's power can't be a rival to that of Turkey, he said. Congo Premier halts aid to struggling bank as the Congo franc weakens. Prime Minister Augustin Matata Ponyo ordered the central bank to halt loans to struggling Banque Internationale pour l'Afrique because they're contributing to the franc's weakness. The central bank, which took over statutory management of BIAC in May, has loaned the Kinshasa-based bank $126 million over the past 4 months in an effort to deal with a continuing liquidity crisis and save customer deposits. Ponyo, drastic measures to stop this financial mafia installed at BIAC with connection to the central bank are required, Ponyo's office said in the statement. The creation of money out of nothing through BIAC has had a negative impact on the economy. The BIAC said that they cannot install a mafia, much less encourage money creation. Ponyo said the creation of the money contributed to further depreciation of the franc over the past 2 months. The franc has weakened 6.2% so far this year, according to central bank data. Apparently, the scratch card rate is much more reflective of what the real FX rate is. Dollar Rand, I'll put up a 6-month chart, we're still at the top of the range, but I expect us to back up. Egyptian EGX30 is up 7.1% this year. Nigerian All Share down 1.47% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange down 10.71% this year. Tanzania gets a $7.6 billion loan from China's Exim Bank for railway. This is what President Magufuli's office said on Wednesday. The planned standard gauge railway will improve regional trade links and help to boost the economies of Tanzania and its landlocked neighbors, including Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and the DRC, the statement said. In 2014, it signed an agreement with China Merchant Holding International to build a mega port and economic zone at Bagamoyo. That is expected to cost at least $10 billion. Bagamoyo was the city 3 or 4 generations ago where my family was. Actually, they came from India to Zanzibar, from Zanzibar to Tanzania, Mombasa, and then all over the world. But there is a story of one of my aunties, extremely well-to-do, and she was murdered in Bagamoyo, actually, for her jewelry, which they discovered she'd hidden so well that the robbers never found it. 16th of May 2016, I wrote about the geopolitics of pipelines in East Africa. And I said President Magufuli has shifted the center of gravity for East African oil and gas south in one fell swoop. Put up a photograph of the Mombasa-Nairobi Railway, the Lunatic Express, seen just outside the entrance to Savo East. Going back to that article I wrote, in my humble opinion, Magufuli has moved with speed and precision, paired the price of brokerage charges. He's winning. I said it's time for some serious soul-searching, folks. Put up another photograph of a railway crossing sign at Manyani Gate, which is as you enter the Savo. Have a look at the yield since the bond was launched of the 10-year Kenyan Eurobond. We're currently at 7.4%, and I think this puts it in the zone for the government to issue more debt, either via a tap or via a new issue. I think optically they want to be below 8% with your sort of 10-year now at 7.4. You can build in a concession and get it off lower than 8. Kenya trade with the United Kingdom. This is via Bloomberg, pretty interesting. Central Bank of Kenya tweeted the KDIC, Kenya Deposit Insurance Corporation, press release on Imperial Bank Limited, which is in receivership essentially. They're liquidating treasury bills and paying out 1.5 million across the customer base. Kenya's middle class is growing, but a small percentage of the population. This was Moody's at that presentation I spoke at last week. Deaths and disappearances, abuses and counter-terrorism operations in Nairobi and northeastern Kenya, is a report by Human Rights Watch. Farah's family has been searching for him for over a year. He's one of at least 34 people, including 2 women, according to Human Rights Watch research, taken into custody by security forces during counter-terrorism operations in northeastern Kenya between 2013 and 2015. That report is linked on the website. Kenya shilling 101.60, Nairobi all share turned 0.7% higher yesterday. It's down 4.86% this year. Kenya Airways, which had rallied 11.76% over the last 2 sessions in anticipation of the earnings release, which we received this morning. Let me take you through it. Revenue up 5.44%, top line. Direct operating costs down 10.778%. Fleet ownership costs were higher, 14.06%. I think they had to offload some leases in a fire sale. Overheads down 6.91%. Total operating loss improved by 74.94% to 4.093 billion. Finance costs increased substantially, 7.047 billion. Loss on fuel derivatives, 4.155 billion. Therefore, the loss before income tax was 26.099 billion versus 29.712 billion last time, an improvement of 12.16%. Loss per share, 17 shillings and 53 cents. Total assets are now in negative territory when you look at the entire company. Got about 4.82 billion shillings of cash on hand. They're saying passenger numbers increased to 4.23 million plus 1.2%, despite a reduction in the available seat kilometers. Cabin factor plus 5%, revenue plus 5%, operating costs reduced by 5%, gross profit improved 42%, operating margin improved by 11 percentage points. They're saying, and it's being debated by everybody on Twitter, but they're saying excluding one-off impacts, break-even achieved in the year at an operating profit. Loss before tax reduced by 12%. They're saying the government of Kenya and KLM remain supportive of the company's efforts. Cabin load factor 68.13%. Have a look at this, 9.7 billion shilling impact of FX losses. We've had tremendous volatility in African currencies, and you can see that's exhibited itself here because of their exposure. I think that 60% of their businesses are Africa. Nigeria, money was locked up. You've had a lot of airlines drop off. Angola, same thing. So I think actually counterintuitive, if you can get the money management side right, probably bill everybody in dollars. Then you've got an opportunity to fill those gaps that have come out. Okay, so it's a big improvement at the operating level. FX has been quantified, clocked a 9.7 billion loss. Hopefully they've now let their fuel hedges run off. They're talking about, getting back to square one in about 12 to 18 months. NSE 20s down 12.87% this year at a 13th of April 2012 low. Combined market share of 3 stockbrokers stood at 50.7% compared to 44.3% in June last year. That's interesting concentration you can see. Yesterday, the Nairobi Securities Exchange, the NSE 20 went down, the Nairobi All-Share went up. Nairobi All-Share went up because Safaricom rallied 1.98%, making that the 2-day 4.34% rally. Kenya Airways, as I've already told you, rallied into these earnings. Let's see what happens now. Equity, well traded, closed minus 0.68%. Standard Chartered has been the best performing bank share in what has been a very soft banking complex. It's up 18.46% in 2016, but that's without factoring dividend. And EABL is also a little further to close at 267. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I'm always grateful. And if you want to follow the results after, want to follow the earnings at all, or the share price performance, just go to rich.co.ke, log in. It's pretty simple. Get a password. It's free. Then log in with your email ID and your password, and you're off. And you can track things. But at the moment, I believe the NSE live feed is down. Once again, thank you for stopping by.